Welcome visionaries, innovators, and change makers to Season 2 of the Value-Based Healthcare Podcast. This is New Frontiers. We're taking you on an expedition into the evolving landscape of healthcare, exploring the most innovative solutions to healthcare plan challenges, cutting-edge healthcare technology, and new perspectives that present groundbreaking ideas. So join us as we unveil the future of healthcare in ways you've never seen before.
Welcome to the Value-Based Healthcare Podcast. Joining us today, we have an innovator, a visionary leading a company that is exploring new frontiers in healthcare and cognitive development. Paolo Pirjanian is the founder and CEO of Embodied. Founded in 2016, Embodied is an industry-leading robotics and AI company creating state-of-the-art companion robots to revolutionize care and wellness by enhancing quality of life for individuals and their families. They developed Moxie, a revolutionary companion robot for children designed to help promote social, emotional, and cognitive development through play-based learning and captivating content. I'll bring Paolo into our podcast today. Welcome to our podcast, Paolo. So great to be together again with you.
Thank you, Jay. Likewise, I appreciate you inviting me to this.
Been looking forward to it since our first conversation back in January. So let's get started. I have a few questions really about your background and your experience within healthcare. So first, how about a high-level story on your background, how you came to be leading a software and hardware company trying to support behavioral health?
Well, so I'm a PhD in AI and robotics, graduated in Denmark. I moved to the US to work at NASA JPL, which was a childhood dream job to work for NASA. I worked on Mars rovers. Shortly thereafter, I got sucked into entrepreneurship, actually, because of Idea Lab in Pasadena, which is one of the earliest incubators by Bill Gross, who has created many companies. He wanted to start a robotics company, which sounded enticing, and I joined him, founded a company that got acquired by iRobot. If you have a Roomba, I'm partially guilty of the results of that. And did that for about 10 years, actually. We shipped like 20 million plus robots, and that was exciting. But there was part of me that always wanted to help children. And this is informed by my own childhood, which we don't need to get into today. But I really wanted to see if we can take the latest advancements in AI and create a compassionate, patient, and adorable lifelong learning companion for children that's going to help them develop their heart, their mind, and eventually also physically help them with healthy living choices.
Well, that's an amazing background, Paolo. And thanks for the quick intro on Embodied. Maybe just to double click on that, could you give us if you're talking to somebody new about Embodied, can you share your elevator pitch?
Yeah, we are basically building a companion robot for children that's going to help them develop emotionally. So a lot to do with mental health and learning skills that we, in layman terms, would refer to as EQ skills, emotional intelligence skills, social skills, emotional regulation, mindfulness, positive thinking, and all of the good things that are super important. We are teaching them social skills of how to handle social situations. For instance, if a child is dealing with bullying or some other challenging situation in their life, Moxie, our robot, can actually interact with them and help them understand how to manage this kind of situation. And there's also fun activities to keep the child engaged. So basically, it's the most advanced AI that has compassion and empathy and has understanding of mental health for children.
Well, I applaud what you're doing, and certainly no easy task. And you mentioned AI. So can you share a little bit of how you see robotics and AI transforming the healthcare landscape?
Well, actually, so the area that, of course, we are focused on, which is companionship, I believe is a game changer, not only for children, but throughout our life. I think there's going to be moments where you need some care. As an example, when you start getting into retirement and aging, loneliness is an epidemic that is extremely tough to deal with. There are many studies that have shown that loneliness leads to a lot of physical health issues and mental health issues and deterioration of health that leading to death. In the society we live in today, unfortunately, if an elderly person in your family lives alone, we do not have the time or may not even have the proximity to spend enough time with them, and they are lonely. And when you lose that human connection, I believe that your brain starts disconnecting from life and the desire to want to look forward to the next day. Unless an elderly is physically healthy, active, has hobbies and social connection, it gets really tough. So behavioral health is also suffering from a massive shortage of care providers. Although Moxie was released and launched for children, we get constantly getting inbound requests from a lot of behavioral health organizations that are catering even to the elderly population. And their number one pressing issue is shortage of staff. So on one hand, you may say it's paradoxical to think we can create human connection that's so sensitive with AI and robots. On the other hand, what other choices do we have? The society is going to need AI to fill in some of these areas. So I think mental health and eventually even physical health support will be supported by AI. So it's a completely game changer. It's going to transform everything we know of today, I believe.
Yeah. Look, I think social isolation in seniors is a real issue. There are a number of companies out there that have models, number of them using college students to create companionship for seniors. Those are difficult to scale, and there's limitations on availability of individuals. So I think there is another amazing market there for you as you gain and enjoy the traction that you're seeking to have with adolescents. So you're talking AI, everybody's talking AI, everyone's talking generative AI. So how has generative AI changed your view on what robotics are capable of, and specifically what you're capable of doing with Embodied?
Yeah, so I've been doing AI pretty much all of my career. And even at Embodied, when we were launching Moxie in 2001, we released Moxie. Moxie would probably not be as good as it is today without generative AI. For instance, one of the key areas where we use generative AI is actually having conversation. You can literally talk to Moxie about anything you want to talk about. Not specific topics. Like prior to generative AI, you had to have conversation trees, which are very similar to what you experience when you call a customer support line with a automated answering service. Very limited. If you go outside of the script, it doesn't know what to do. With generative AI, it allows you to literally have conversation about any topic you want. And you can, these days now with the generative large language models getting better and better, you can go in as much depth as you want. And within the next 12 months, these large language models are going to be infinitely knowledgeable about any topic you want to have conversations about. The other piece is that we have developed our own AI that allows us to infuse empathy and understanding of human emotions and human mental health in there, so that the machine is not just a robot with cold, no empathy and so on. It has to understand humans, because a lot of the conversations we are having, there's a lot of very interesting emotional needs that we have, that we are communicating through the intonation of our voice, our body language, our facial expression. And that's part of what we have done as well, is that we look not only, it's not just a text to text, but it's text, audio, and video. We analyze all of that because there's a correlation between what I say and how I say it. I could text you, Jay, I'm fine. And then I could call you and say, I'm fine. When you hear the voice, it already gives you a bit more context. And then if you see my body language, and if I'm like, I'm fine, I'm like, not fine, you know?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that's super important about what we do, is the combination of modalities to understand the entire conversation. By the way, nonverbal communication contains 93% of the information versus 7% from text. 93% comes from nonverbal cues.
Fascinating. Talking about your how you're using AI and the ability for Moxie to interact and kind of go off script. I imagine you've also had to do some work to make sure that when it goes down some roads, it doesn't go to places that could create harm and create, other issues, kind of unanticipated issues. So can you share a little bit of what you're doing to protect yourself, protect the child and the family using Moxie?
Absolutely. Especially for our product who is dealing with children, super critical, and it's been top of mind for us from the very first day. And I would tell you an area that I was very paranoid about. The easier part was security and privacy. Make sure systems are not going to be easy to hack, right? So we put a lot of effort in making sure the systems are secure. Every bit of information is encrypted. Every piece of personally identifiable information, PII, is encrypted with a unique key that only the parent has access to. We don't even have access to that. Meaning that if one day someone puts a gun to my head and said, I need this data, I wouldn't be able to give it to them. The other thing is like vision, the computer vision part of it. We do not push any of that into the cloud. It's all gets processed on Moxie itself, on the edge. So that's relatively table stakes, easy part. The part that gets more nuanced is the AI part. How do you assure that Moxie doesn't say something that could be harmful to a child? And by the way, children do confide in Moxie about things that they may not even confide to their parents or teachers about, right? So super important that we have a safe AI. And so we have put a ton of guardrails on it. Things that are explicit, clear, are easy. Like if there are profanities, easy to detect those. If it's about explicitly saying, I'm going to commit suicide or want to kill myself, those are relatively easy to detect and prevent or redirect the conversation to somewhere positive. So we have a lot of guardrails that do that. The part that gets more interesting is when you have nuanced things. What if the child says, I just want to hold my breath for the next 10 minutes? Maybe insinuating I want to kill myself. And you can imagine that language is super complex. You can say the same thing in a million possible ways. Yeah. So we have intent classifiers that are being trained to detect this kind of nuanced conversations as well. And then you go to even more nuanced area. For instance, we are teaching children about social emotional development, but children can talk about anything they want. What happens if a child wants to talk to Moxie about the Bible? Does Moxie respond to that? What if it was a household that was not Christians, but they were Muslims, and Moxie started talking about the Bible? Is that so? We even have solutions that are sort of protecting the child's norms and values relative to their culture and family values. So yeah, we have, fortunately, knock on wood, until today, we have not had a single incident of anything bad happening.
That's good to hear. Yeah, and amazing the amount of work that you've done to anticipate all the avenues. I imagine as you seek to move ahead and sell to institutions and sell to perhaps to health plans that would make this available for their members, people want to talk about success and results. So how do you think about success of Moxie and being able to communicate that to people who may, choose to engage with you on a larger scale?
So we chose from very early on that our first go-to market is actually going to be direct to consumer. So we are selling directly to parents. That's the majority of our sales. And the reason for that is twofold. One, we can control that destiny a lot better by going direct to consumers. Secondly, because we know the regulatory path can be a very long, winded path and can take a while. And we want to start generating revenues as well as refine the product. So being in the market for us was super important, and going direct to consumer was the shortcut. Having said that, yes, we do have ambitions on the long run to work with institutions. And the good news is that we have so many inbound interests from hospitals, clinics, behavioral health systems, schools, libraries, after school care programs, violence intervention centers, you name it. And we are getting ready for that. For instance, one of the requirements in working with this, as you are, I'm sure, intimately familiar with, is HIPAA compliance. So we have been going through the process of getting HIPAA compliance. We are this close to getting that. The other part is that there's other requirements, like when you're connecting to the networking infrastructure of a hospital, there are certain standards and scrutiny you have to go through for them to feel comfortable doing that, and so on. So we are sort of gradually growing a muscle in that direction to be able to serve that market. The interest and the demand is absolutely there. We just got to be ready to be able to serve them.
Helpful, and really good to hear you share that. I want to kind of have, I think, one more question on AI. And we see this a lot in our business as we seek to deploy AI to make clinicians, reviewers of medical records more efficient. There's a concern about displacement. So what did you do to address concerns, or do you see concerns being surfaced from traditional caregivers that see Moxie, and other kind of, let's call it, social robots as a displacement of caregivers?
No, that was going into it when we were starting the company. I was really worried that was going to be the stigma that we would have to overcome. I've been super positively surprised by the open arm invitation for us to participate in all these kind of environments. As an example, we work with University of Rochester Medical Center Pediatric Care. They came to us and they came with like a list of 10 different applications of where Moxie could be helpful, from intake of patients to holding the patient's hands while they're going through scary procedures. Like MRI scans are scary for children, and you gotta calm them down, say it's going to be okay, explain to them what the procedure looks like, and so on. And again, the common thread here is shortage of staff. So we have nurses that are super busy. There's a shortage of them. They're running around. And a lot of these things that are important to humans are high touch things. Takes a lot of time. So for a nurse to sit there for an hour to talk to a patient and get them mentally ready for going through a procedure is just not tenable. Yeah. A hospital cannot afford to have a nurse spend an hour with a patient telling them about what the procedure is, and it's going to be all good, and your family is going to be here, and all that. And that's where you can have AI, empathetic AI, be closing that gap, as an example. Which is a little bit, I was going to say, it's a bit of a oxymoron, right? Because humans, we are good at human emotions and all these things. And we are saying we don't have time for that. We're going to have AI fill in for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an oxymoron, but I mean, your point's well documented around the shortage of nurses, a gap that is only widening. Um, maybe if you don't mind, kind of sharing a little bit on the R&D side. So, what anything you can share on R&D projects currently kind of on deck at Embodied?
Oh man, there is no shortage. I mean, we are innovating as much as we were innovating in day one of the company. And especially when you're in a field that is moving at exponential speed, if you do not innovate, you are just going to be left behind in the dust in a matter of no time. I mean, as we have seen, just to give a reference point, in 2021, when we launched Moxie, we launched it with a language model we developed that had 1 billion parameters in it, which sounded a lot back then. Today, we have language models that have close to 1 trillion parameters in it, right? I mean, that's how fast we are moving.
Yeah.
We are moving at a pace of about 200x on performance and about 10x on cost reduction. So combined 2000x in 1 year, right? And if we are not able to keep up with that, I don't think we are going to exist in a year or two from now. So we are innovating like crazy. That's sort of the pace of innovation. And there's many areas, right? So one of the areas that's super interesting for us, and it provides tailwinds for us, is one of the things that generative AI has unlocked is content. And content is king in Moxie, because Moxie needs to be able to engage a child for the long run. So it has to have a variety of content so that the child doesn't get bored, but also to personalize or individualize the path for the child. So not every child likes the same topics to talk about. So manually building all that content is close to impossible. With generative AI, it all of a sudden opens the doors, and now we have a wealth of content, potentially unlimited amount of content, that is going to make the product experience so much richer, and we can individualize the experience to every single child, literally individualize. As an example, the other part of the Moxie thing is that we have a parent app, and we interact. The parent app interacts with the parent and asks about the child if there's anything unique they should share. Let's say a parent shares that we are going through divorce right now. This is being very hard on Tommy. That specific information will be used by Moxie to work on things that are going to help Tommy understand how to manage his emotions through that journey. This is hyper individualization of experience, right? So this is super powerful. I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, you must be. I imagine the kind of the widespread adoption of OpenAI is making generative AI something that more individuals understand and are open to, and I would imagine that's accelerating adoption for you.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, on one hand, it has two sides to it, right? One side is people are more scared of AI. So there is huge level of skepticism. It's healthy to have skepticism. It's healthy to have discussions and understand these things. But on the other hand, it's also making it a lot more familiar. Interacting with AI is no longer foreign to us. 100 million people downloaded ChatGPT and are interacting with it, right? So yeah, absolutely.
Maybe on that point, what do you see as the key factors contributing to widespread adoption?
I really think it's mostly about human-machine interface. As the interface of machines gets closer and closer to our interface, which is conversation, the easier it becomes to adopt it. Like we have the old example of the old VCRs, clock on the old VCRs. Most homes you would go to, the clock was flashing because it was never set, because you had to figure out how to set the clock.
Yeah.
That is an interface that's not very human, natural to humans. Conversation and emotions and body language is how we communicate, and the more machines can do that, the wider the adoption will become. So I think what happened with ChatGPT is that they created a text interface, which we are very familiar with. It's using language and it's using a medium. We message each other all the time on any different app, like from Slack to SMS, you name it. And that's made it just available and accessible to everyone that can type. And the next step is going to be voice and body language. This is what we are doing, right? We're building human-machine interface that's completely natural. If, for instance, if you look at Moxie, the robot, Moxie only has one switch on it, and it's the power on and off. It has no other interface other than you. You are the interface. You talk to it, your body language, your intonation of voice, your eye contact, your nodding, and all these things is the interface to Moxie, which makes a 5-year-old be able to use it.
I love it. I love it. Paolo, it's been a great conversation about embodied Moxie and how AI is allowing you to bring an amazing robot to support adolescents dealing with some important behavioral and mental health. So as we look to wrap up, I got one final question for you. Your company, and all your employees focused on improving behavioral health in adolescents. Perhaps you can share, how do you focus on your own mental health?
Yeah, that's a tough question. And the honest answer is I'm not very good at it myself. I've become a lot more mindful of that since I started Embodied. I'm definitely a lot better at it in this company than my previous company. But Jay, as I'm sure you know, the life of an entrepreneur is not as rosy as it's usually glorified to be, right? I mean, and mental health and anxiety and all these things are very real things on an everyday basis for us. For us, we are, every startup for a long time is going to be on the verge of failure or massive success. And we live that's a reality to us every day, and it can be mentally super challenging. So for me, first of all, my family and spending time with friends is super important. Traveling is super important. Again, time is limited for that, but whenever time allows, and working out. I'm unfortunately not as disciplined as I should be, but I try my best. And by the way, I do honestly go into some very deep, dark places mentally sometimes when the headwinds are there, and you're like, damn, yet another major obstacle, and so on. I mean, like, I always tell my team, every year, expect there's going to be a completely unanticipated, major life-threatening challenge that will happen to us every year. It's been my entrepreneurial journey the last 20 years. Yeah. Every year, there's going to be a major threat. It seems like this year's was SVB. We had all of our money in SVB, and there was 4 or 5 days where we were like, okay, we lost all of our money, but fortunately didn't. So we don't do this for the fun of it. We don't do this because it's easy. We do it because we believe it's worth it, right? We believe it's worth it to do something to put your small mark on the world. And that's what drives me. And that's what gets me up every day, right? Every time I'm down, that is what gets me up and says. And then the other thing that gets you up, the more experience you get, the older you get, the more confidence you have that despite the fact that right now it looks like this is like super bad, everything is bad, you got to reflect on saying, well, we have figured it out many times over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
The dots will connect somehow, right? So that confidence allows you to propel forward.
Yeah. Well, I certainly echo your comments, or my experience is similar to yours in that there's always a challenge every year that's unanticipated. I think what keeps me going through many of those is, and I've said this in other interviews, I share it with my team a lot. when you're confronted with that problem, it may seem big and daunting at the moment, but I generally think it's never as big as and daunting as it initially appears. And I do believe that teams can always accomplish far more than they think is possible, and those two working together can get you past them. Well, Paolo, this has been an amazing conversation, and probably more than amazing, it's been inspiring to hear where Embodied is and how it's continuing to accelerate in its mission and its market success since we were last together early at the start of the year. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your experience with our listeners. I'm sure they will enjoy this episode as much as I've enjoyed reconnecting with you today. To learn more about the Value-Based Healthcare Podcast, follow Revelier on LinkedIn or visit our website at www.revelier.com to access this episode and previous episodes. And until next time.